I will not allow my son to be victimized again, whether physically or academically. When a new black student refuses to sit down in class due to a hidden injury, his math professor sees only defiance. To put him in his place, she challenges him with an impossible equation that even graduate students struggle to solve. But what happens when this test reveals a mathematical genius she never expected? Why was James really standing? And what dark truth about his previous school would leave Dr. Peterson completely speechless? This powerful story of prejudice, exceptional talent, and redemption will make you question your own assumptions. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published news stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. James Johnson clutched his backpack straps tightly as he stood outside the imposing brick facade of Westridge Academy. The prestigious prep school loomed before him, worlds away from the underfunded public school he'd attended until last week. The scholarship that brought him here was his ticket to a better future, one his mother had sacrificed everything to secure. "You can do this," he whispered to himself, wincing slightly as he adjusted his posture. The pain in his lower back flared, a constant reminder of his last day at Eastside High. The memory flashed unbidden, Ms. Winters slamming her ruler across his back when he'd corrected her calculus solution in front of the class. "Know-it-all children need to learn respect," she'd hissed as the class watched in horrified silence. The school counselor's office was his first stop. Mr. Raymond Carter, a tall black man with kind eyes and a firm handshake, welcomed him with genuine warmth. "James Johnson. I've been looking forward to meeting you," Mr. Carter said, gesturing to a chair. "Your transcripts are remarkable." James eased himself gently into the seat, careful not to lean against the backrest. "Thank you, sir." Mr. Carter flipped through a folder. "Perfect scores on every math assessment, recommendations from the State Math Competition Committee. But I notice your participation grades dropped in the last semester." His eyebrow raised in question. James stared at his hands. "I found it sometimes better not to stand out too much." Mr. Carter studied him for a long moment. "I understand. But Westridge could use more students who excel the way you do." He leaned forward. "You were accepted here because of your extraordinary abilities, James. Don't dim your light." As they reviewed his schedule, James nodded politely, but inside, doubt gnawed at him. Dr. Marcus Freeman, his former mentor from the University Math Enrichment Program, had warned him that places like Westridge might not be ready for a young black mathematician who challenged expectations. "Your first class is Advanced Placement Calculus with Dr. Peterson," Mr. Carter noted. "She's demanding but brilliant." "I'll do my best, sir," James replied quietly. Mr. Carter's expression softened. "Remember, you belong here as much as anyone. If you need anything at all, my door is always open." As James left the office, he touched the folded acceptance letter to the MIT summer program in his pocket, his secret talisman. Whatever happened here, it was just one step on a longer journey. The Advanced Placement Calculus classroom buzzed with the privileged energy of Westridge Academy's brightest students. Designer backpacks rested beside desks, and conversations about summer vacations in Europe and private coding camps filled the air. James paused at the threshold, instantly aware of how his second-hand uniform and worn backpack set him apart. Dr. Angelina Peterson stood at the front of the classroom, her blonde hair streaked with white, pulled into a severe bun. Despite her medium build, she commanded the room with an authority that silenced the students as she began sorting through papers on her desk. At 46, she'd been teaching at Westridge for over 15 years and had built a reputation for producing Ivy League mathematicians. James scanned the room, looking for an empty seat. His back throbbed at the thought of sitting for an hour. The doctor had advised him to stand when possible while the deep bruising healed. Taking a deep breath, he moved to an empty space against the back wall. A girl with copper hair and freckles caught his eye and smiled. "Hi, I'm Emma," she whispered. "Are you new?" Before James could respond, a voice cut through the room. "Young man, we don't loiter in this classroom." Dr. Peterson's sharp tone drew all eyes to James. "Take a seat immediately." James straightened, his voice quiet but clear. "I apologize, ma'am. I have a medical condition. Standing is more comfortable for me right now." Dr. Peterson's eyes narrowed as she assessed him, taking in his immaculate but clearly worn uniform. "A medical condition? Do you have a doctor's note?" "Yes, ma'am." James reached for his backpack, but Dr. Peterson waved dismissively. "This is an advanced placement class, not a casual gathering. Proper posture at a desk helps maintain focus." Her lips thinned. "What's your name?" "James Johnson, ma'am." A snicker came from the front row. A boy with perfectly styled blonde hair turned to his friend. "Scholarship case," he muttered, just loud enough to be heard. Dr. Peterson glanced at her roster. "Johnson, yes. Our new transfer." Something in her tone suggested she'd already formed an opinion. "Well, Mr. Johnson, at Westridge, we have standards. If you can't adhere to classroom protocol, perhaps this level is too ambitious for you." Emma frowned. "Dr. Peterson, if he has a medical..." "That's enough, Miss Wilson," Dr. Peterson interrupted. She fixed her gaze on James again. "Well? Are you joining us properly, or shall I have you reassigned to a regular math class?" James felt every eye in the room on him. He recognized the challenge in Dr. Peterson's stare, the same look Ms. Winters had given him before everything went wrong. The pain in his back seemed to intensify with the memory. "I'd like to stay in AP Calculus," he said evenly. "But I need to stand, at least for today." Dr. Peterson's eyebrows rose. The classroom grew tense with silence. "Well, Mr. Johnson," Dr. Peterson said, her voice dripping with skepticism, "it seems you believe yourself exceptional enough to be granted special privileges on your very first day." She set down her pen with deliberate precision and folded her hands on the desk. The classroom remained painfully silent. James could feel the stares of 23 students burning into him. Some, like the blonde boy, Tyler Brooks, according to the monogram on his expensive leather notebook, watched with barely concealed amusement. Emma Wilson's expression showed concern, while others simply looked uncomfortable. "I don't think I'm exceptional, Dr. Peterson," James replied quietly. "I just have an injury that makes sitting painful right now." "An injury?" Her tone suggested she'd heard every excuse imaginable during her teaching career. What sort of injury would prevent a healthy young man from sitting in a classroom? James hesitated. Explaining meant revealing the humiliation he'd suffered at his previous school, laying bare his vulnerability in front of these strangers. "It's a back injury, ma'am." "A back injury," she repeated flatly. "How convenient." "It's not convenient at all," James said, a hint of frustration finally breaking through his careful composure. "I'd much rather be sitting comfortably." Dr. Peterson's eyes flashed. "Watch your tone, Mr. Johnson. I've taught at this institution for 15 years. Students here understand respect." "I meant no disrespect," James said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Your actions suggest otherwise." She stood now, moving around her desk to stand before the class. "At Westridge Academy, we prepare students for the real world, a world that doesn't bend to accommodate every self-proclaimed special case." Tyler snickered again, nudging his friend. "Told you," he whispered loudly. "Dr. Peterson," Emma interjected, "couldn't James just stand at a desk instead? We do have that standing desk in the corner from when Bradley had his soccer injury." "Miss Wilson, I don't recall asking for your input on classroom management," Dr. Peterson replied sharply. "Mr. Johnson has made his choice to disrupt our learning environment on his first day." James felt a familiar knot forming in his stomach, the same sensation he'd experienced before Ms. Winters had lost her temper. He'd promised his mother there would be no incidents here, that he would keep his head down and just get through until college. "I apologize for any disruption," he said, forcing his voice to remain respectful despite the unfairness burning in his chest. "I can try to sit if that's required." He moved toward an empty desk, bracing himself for the pain. "Stop." Dr. Peterson's command froze him mid-step. Now you're attempting to make me the villain, forcing an injured student to suffer. Her eyes narrowed. If you're so determined to stand out, Mr. Johnson, perhaps you prefer to stand at the board instead? The classroom collectively held its breath. I'm not trying to stand out, James said softly. No. Dr. Peterson's smile didn't reach her eyes. Then why did you choose the most advanced mathematics class for your first day? Your transcripts show perfect scores, but Eastside High hardly compares to Westridge's standards. James remained silent, recognizing the trap. Defend his abilities, and he'd be labeled arrogant. Downplay them, and he'd be confirming her suspicions that he didn't belong. I'll make you a proposition, Mr. Johnson, Dr. Peterson said, her voice carrying a challenge that silenced the room completely. Since you insist on standing, and since your record suggests such remarkable mathematical talent, let's put both to the test simultaneously. She turned and erased the day's planned lesson from the whiteboard with quick, aggressive strokes. In its place, she began writing a complex differential equation that clearly extended far beyond AP calculus level material. Solve this, she said, holding out a marker to James. Prove that your exceptional circumstances are matched by exceptional abilities. The equation sprawled across the whiteboard like a mathematical labyrinth, partial derivatives, complex variables, and nested integrals that seemed deliberately chosen to intimidate. Several students gasped audibly. This wasn't AP calculus material, it looked more like something from a graduate-level course. This is a simplified version of a problem from my doctoral dissertation, Dr. Peterson announced, her voice carrying a note of smug satisfaction. Since you're so comfortable standing, Mr. Johnson, perhaps you can demonstrate your exceptional abilities to the class. James stared at the board, his heart pounding. He recognized elements of the equation from the advanced textbooks Dr. Freeman had shared with him during their weekend study sessions. The solution would require multivariable calculus techniques far beyond the AP curriculum. The marker felt cold in his hand as James approached the board. Behind him, Tyler's voice carried in a stage whisper, "This should be good. Scholarship kid's about to get destroyed." Emma shot Tyler a disgusted look. "Shut up," she hissed. James stood before the equation, conscious of 24 pairs of eyes on his back. The silence in the room was oppressive. He knew Dr. Peterson expected him to falter, to prove he didn't belong among Westridge's elite students. For a moment, he considered deliberately failing. It would be easier to blend in afterward, to become invisible as he had at Eastside after the incident. But his mother's voice echoed in his mind, "Your brilliance is God's gift. Hiding it is like telling God you don't appreciate what you were given." Taking a deep breath, James raised the marker and began to work. His hand moved with precision, breaking down the complex equation into manageable components. The pain in his back became distant as his mind focused entirely on the mathematical challenge before him. "He's actually attempting it," someone whispered in disbelief. Dr. Peterson crossed her arms, watching with narrowed eyes as James methodically worked through the first transformations. Her confidence began to waver as she observed his organized approach. This wasn't random scratching or guesswork, the boy was following a coherent strategy. "That's not even how I would approach it," she murmured involuntarily. James continued, lost in the elegant logic of mathematics, the universal language where prejudice and social status held no meaning. Here, there was only truth and precision. He substituted variables, integrated by parts, and employed techniques he'd studied late at night while his mother worked double shifts to keep their electricity on. Dr. Peterson stepped closer, her brow furrowing as she followed his work. The classroom remained utterly silent except for the squeaking of the marker against the whiteboard. Even Tyler had stopped smirking, his mouth slightly open as he watched the equation transform under James's hand. "Impossible," Dr. Peterson whispered, too quietly for anyone but James to hear. But he kept writing, each step following logically from the last, creating a mathematical narrative more eloquent than any verbal defense he could have offered. As James worked through the equation, his mind flashed back to the small apartment he shared with his mother. The kitchen table covered with textbooks borrowed from the university library. The flickering light of his second-hand laptop at 2 a.m. as he devoured online lectures from MIT and Stanford while his mother slept. Dr. Marcus Freeman's face appeared in his memory, the retired mathematics professor who had discovered James solving advanced equations on scrap paper during a community center event. "This young man has a natural intuition for mathematical structures that I've rarely seen," he had told James's mother. "He thinks in systems and patterns that most people need years of training to grasp." Those weekend mentoring sessions with Dr. Freeman had opened worlds to James: abstract algebra, topology, number theory, far beyond his school curriculum. "Mathematics doesn't care about your zip code or the color of your skin," Dr. Freeman had said. "It only cares about truth." In the classroom, James approached the final steps of the solution. The board was now filled with his neat handwriting, each transformation building logically toward resolution. He was dimly aware that more time had passed than he'd realized, but Dr. Peterson hadn't interrupted him. The class watched in stunned silence. Emma's eyes were wide with admiration. Tyler's smirk had long since disappeared, replaced by begrudging attention. But it was Dr. Peterson's expression that had transformed most dramatically, from dismissive confidence to poorly concealed astonishment. James completed the final substitution and circled the result. The solution stared back at them in elegant simplicity, the complex problem reduced to its fundamental truth. He set down the marker and stepped back, suddenly self-conscious as the spell of mathematical focus broke. The pain in his back returned, along with awareness of the 24 stares fixed upon him. "That's not possible," Dr. Peterson finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. She approached the board, scrutinizing his work with increasingly frantic attention. "How did you?" "I recognized it as a variation of the Navier-Stokes application for fluid dynamics," James explained quietly. "Dr. Freeman showed me similar problems when we discussed practical applications of partial differential equations." "Dr. Freeman?" Dr. Peterson's head snapped up. "Marcus Freeman? From Princeton?" James nodded. "He mentored me after school at the community center. Before he moved away." Dr. Peterson turned back to the board, tracing his steps with her finger. "This approach, it's unconventional. It's not how I solved it in my dissertation. There are multiple valid paths to the same solution in mathematics," James said, then immediately regretted speaking as he saw Dr. Peterson's expression harden again. Dr. Peterson stepped back from the whiteboard, her eyes moving methodically from one step of James's solution to the next. The classroom remained suspended in silence, waiting for her verdict. For James, each passing second felt like an eternity as he stood beside his work, the marker still warm in his hand. "This is..." Dr. Peterson began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. She cleared her throat and tried again, her professional mask sliding back into place. "This is an unorthodox approach." A ripple of murmurs swept through the classroom. Emma leaned forward at her desk, her expression brightening in anticipation of Dr. Peterson's acknowledgement of James's brilliance. But the acknowledgement didn't come. "While Mr. Johnson has demonstrated some mathematical aptitude," Dr. Peterson continued, her tone cooling, "there are several questionable steps in this solution that would require further scrutiny before I could consider it correct." James blinked in surprise. He had double-checked each transformation, each substitution. The solution was sound, he was certain of it. "Could you point out which steps you find questionable, Dr. Peterson?" he asked quietly. The classroom tensed at his respectful challenge. Dr. Peterson's eyes narrowed slightly, but she turned to the board and gestured vaguely toward the middle section of his work. "This substitution here is particularly concerning," she said, though her finger hovered without touching any specific line. "And your application of the chain rule here seems convenient." James looked where she pointed, confusion crossing his features. "The substitution follows from the previous step, and the chain rule application is standard for this type of problem." Tyler snorted from his seat. "Maybe at Eastside they taught you a different kind of math," he said, earning scattered nervous laughter. But Emma stood up suddenly. "I don't see any errors," she declared, surprising everyone, perhaps even herself. "I've been following along, and each step follows logically from the previous one." Dr. Peterson's face flushed. Miss Wilson, unless you've completed a doctorate in applied mathematics, I suggest you reserve your analysis. But if there are errors, Emma persisted, shouldn't we all learn from them? Isn't that the point of education? The classroom fell silent again. Dr. Peterson seemed caught between maintaining her authority and preserving her academic integrity. James stood quietly, his back throbbing with renewed intensity as the adrenaline of mathematical focus faded. The solution is correct. The new voice came from the doorway, where an elderly man in a tweed jacket stood leaning on a carved wooden cane. His silver hair contrasted with his dark skin, and his eyes held the sharp clarity of someone who had spent decades immersed in complex thought. Dr. Abernathy, Dr. Peterson breathed, genuine surprise in her voice. I was passing by and couldn't help but notice this elegant work through the open door, the man said, stepping into the classroom. A beautiful application of the modified Newman approach to the Navier-Stokes problem. He turned to James with a warm smile. You must be very proud, young man. James recognized him immediately from the framed photographs in the main hallway, Dr. William Abernathy, the retired department chair and most distinguished mathematician in Westridge Academy's history. Thank you, sir, James replied softly. Dr. Abernathy turned to Dr. Peterson, his expression gentle but firm. Angelina, I haven't seen such an intuitive grasp of fluid dynamics principles since your own dissertation defense. This young man has a remarkable gift. The classroom remained perfectly still as Dr. Peterson looked from Dr. Abernathy to James, then back to the whiteboard filled with elegant mathematics. Her professional reputation hung in the balance, along with something deeper, her understanding of who belonged in the world of higher mathematics. Yes, she finally said, her voice subdued. The solution is correct. It appears Mr. Johnson has indeed demonstrated exceptional ability. James felt no triumph in her grudging acknowledgement, only relief that the confrontation might be ending. He carefully placed the marker on the tray and moved back toward his position at the rear wall. Perhaps, Dr. Abernathy suggested kindly, we could find a standing desk for Mr. Johnson, given his medical needs. I believe there's one in the faculty lounge that's rarely used. Before Dr. Peterson could respond, the bell rang, signaling the end of the period. Students gathered their belongings in uncomfortable silence, shooting curious glances between James and Dr. Peterson. As students filed out of the classroom, the atmosphere remained charged with unresolved tension. James carefully gathered his belongings, wincing slightly as he bent to pick up his backpack. The mathematical triumph had temporarily distracted him from his pain, but now it returned with full force. That was incredible, Emma said, approaching him with genuine admiration in her eyes. I've never seen anyone solve something that complex before, especially not under pressure. Thanks, James replied softly, uncomfortable with the attention. Tyler pushed past them, deliberately bumping James's shoulder. Teacher's pet already, he muttered. Or maybe she just felt sorry for you. Back off, Tyler, Emma snapped. Dr. Peterson remained at her desk, organizing papers with sharp, agitated movements while Dr. Abernathy stood nearby, speaking to her in low tones. James couldn't hear their conversation, but the tension in Dr. Peterson's posture was unmistakable. Mr. Johnson, Dr. Peterson called suddenly, her voice forcibly professional. A moment before you leave. James approached her desk cautiously as the last students exited. Dr. Abernathy gave him an encouraging nod before departing himself, closing the door behind him. That was an impressive display, Dr. Peterson said, not quite meeting his eyes. Though I wonder if perhaps you'd encountered that specific problem before. James felt a flash of indignation. No, ma'am. I've never seen that exact equation before. It seems unlikely that a student from your background would have such advanced knowledge without specific preparation, she persisted. Especially considering the particular approach you used. My background? James repeated, the words hanging between them, loaded with implication. Dr. Peterson's eyes finally met his, challenging. Your previous school is not known for producing mathematicians of this caliber. I'm simply noting the statistical improbability. Statistics can be misleading when applied to individuals, James replied quietly, recalling Dr. Freeman's words. Outliers exist in every data set. Something flickered across Dr. Peterson's face, annoyance, perhaps, or discomfort at being challenged again. Well, Mr. Johnson, you've certainly made your entrance memorable. I hope your performance today wasn't a one-time event designed to make a point. Math isn't about making points, James said. It's about truth. Dr. Peterson's lips thinned. We'll see what truths emerge as the semester progresses. You're dismissed. As James turned to leave, the door opened to reveal Mr. Carter, the guidance counselor. Ah, perfect timing, he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Dr. Peterson, I was hoping to catch you. And James, just the student I was looking for. Would you both mind joining me in my office? There's something we need to discuss. Dr. Peterson's expression tightened further. I have another class in 15 minutes, Mr. Carter. This won't take long, Mr. Carter assured her, his tone pleasant but firm. Principal Davenport is expecting us. Principal Richard Davenport's office exuded old-world academia, oak bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes, a massive desk that had presumably witnessed decades of disciplinary actions, and framed photographs of Westridge Academy's illustrious alumni. The man himself matched his surroundings, gray-haired, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, with the confident bearing of someone unaccustomed to having his authority questioned. James sat uncomfortably in one of the visitor chairs, while Dr. Peterson perched stiffly in another. Mr. Carter stood near the window, his expression thoughtful. I understand there was an incident in advanced placement calculus this morning, Principal Davenport began, folding his hands on his desk. Dr. Abernathy was quite impressed by what he witnessed. The new student demonstrated some mathematical aptitude, Dr. Peterson acknowledged, her tone measured. Though I'm concerned about his refusal to follow classroom protocol. Mr. Carter cleared his throat. James has a documented medical reason for standing during class, which I personally reviewed during his enrollment processing. A doctor's note claiming back pain, Dr. Peterson said dismissively. Hardly a reason to disrupt established classroom procedures. The note doesn't merely claim pain, Mr. Carter corrected firmly. It documents a serious injury requiring ongoing physical therapy. Principal Davenport's eyebrows rose slightly. I see. And yet, Dr. Peterson, rather than accommodating this medical need, you chose to challenge Mr. Johnson with a graduate-level mathematics problem. Dr. Peterson straightened. As an educator with 15 years of experience at Westridge, I believe in maintaining high standards. Mr. Johnson's standing posture was disruptive to the learning environment. And how did the class respond when he solved your impossible equation? Mr. Carter asked quietly. A knock at the door interrupted Dr. Peterson's response. The school secretary poked her head in. Mrs. Johnson has arrived, sir, she announced. James's heart sank. His mother had taken precious time off from her nursing assistant job to come to school, on his very first day. This was exactly what he'd hoped to avoid. Denise Johnson entered the room with dignity, still wearing her hospital scrubs under a light jacket. Despite the clear exhaustion in her eyes, she carried herself with unmistakable strength. She immediately went to James, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. What happened? She asked, looking directly at Principal Davenport. I received an urgent call to come to the school. Is James all right? Mrs. Johnson, thank you for coming so quickly, Principal Davenport said, rising to offer her his seat, which she declined with a small shake of her head. There seems to have been a misunderstanding regarding your son's medical accommodation. Misunderstanding? Mrs. Johnson repeated, her gaze shifting to Dr. Peterson. My son has a documented injury. His doctor specifically advised him to avoid prolonged sitting while the contusions heal. Contusions? Principal Davenport echoed, looking confused. Mrs. Johnson's grip on James's shoulder tightened slightly. Yes. Bruising along his lower back and spine. From the incident at his previous school. The room fell silent. James stared at his hands, wishing he could disappear. He hadn't wanted his mother to reveal this, to expose his vulnerability, his history. What incident? Principal Davenport asked, his tone softening considerably. Mrs. Johnson looked at James apologetically before continuing. My son was physically disciplined by a teacher at Eastside High for correcting a mathematical error during class. The teacher struck him repeatedly with a wooden ruler across his back, causing significant bruising and soft tissue damage. Dr. Peterson's face paled visibly. The school board reviewed the case, Mrs. Johnson continued. The teacher was suspended, but we decided James would be better served in a different environment. When Westridge offered the scholarship, it seemed like divine intervention. A heavy silence filled Principal Davenport's office as Mrs. Johnson's words lingered in the air. Dr. Peterson sat motionless, her earlier defensiveness replaced by visible discomfort. I have the medical reports and the school board's findings, Mrs. Johnson continued, removing a folder from her bag. James's physical therapist believes the injury should heal completely with time and proper care. Until then, standing during class is recommended. Principal Davenport accepted the folder, his expression grave as he reviewed the contents. This is deeply troubling, Mrs. Johnson. I assure you, Westridge Academy has a zero-tolerance policy for physical discipline of any kind. I'm glad to hear that, Mrs. Johnson replied, her voice steady but with an undercurrent of steel. Because I will not allow my son to be victimized again, whether physically or academically. Mr. Carter stepped forward. Perhaps this would be a good time to share the rest of James's file, he suggested, placing another folder on the principal's desk. Including his achievements that weren't mentioned during this morning's incident. Principal Davenport opened the second folder, his eyebrows rising progressively as he scanned the documents inside. This is quite extraordinary, he murmured. What is it? Dr. Peterson asked, unable to contain her curiosity. Mr. Johnson was accepted to the Advanced Mathematical Studies program at MIT last summer, Principal Davenport read aloud, looking up at James with newfound respect. Only 20 students nationwide are selected annually. Dr. Peterson's mouth opened slightly in surprise. And, Principal Davenport continued, he has a published paper in the Young Mathematician's Journal on applications of topology in network theory. He looked at James directly. Co-authored with Dr. Marcus Freeman of Princeton University. James has been working with Dr. Freeman since he was 12, Mrs. Johnson explained, pride evident in her voice. Their community center program was designed to identify mathematical talent in underserved neighborhoods. Dr. Freeman is a Fields Medal nominee, Dr. Peterson said faintly, recognition dawning on her face. Yes, Mrs. Johnson confirmed. He recognized James's gift immediately and has mentored him ever since. James was heartbroken when Dr. Freeman relocated to the West Coast last year for family reasons. Principal Davenport carefully replaced the papers in the folder. Mrs. Johnson, I want to personally apologize for your son's experience today. It appears there was indeed a significant misunderstanding. His gaze shifted to Dr. Peterson, who seemed to shrink slightly under his scrutiny. James doesn't seek special treatment, Mrs. Johnson said firmly. He only wants to learn in an environment that respects both his physical needs and his intellectual abilities. A completely reasonable expectation, Principal Davenport agreed. He turned to Dr. Peterson. Dr. Peterson, would you agree that accommodating Mr. Johnson's medical needs is appropriate, given these circumstances? Dr. Peterson nodded stiffly. Of course. I wasn't fully aware of the situation. And perhaps, Mr. Carter suggested gently, recognizing his demonstrated mathematical abilities would also be appropriate. Dr. Peterson's gaze finally met James's directly. For the first time, he saw something beyond dismissal in her eyes, perhaps the beginning of a reassessment. The standing desk from the faculty lounge will be moved to your classroom immediately, Principal Davenport decided. And Dr. Peterson, I believe you and Mr. Johnson have some further discussion to conduct regarding appropriate academic challenges for his level of ability. Yes, Dr. Peterson agreed quietly. It seems we do. Mrs. Johnson squeezed James's shoulder gently. I need to return to work now, sweetheart. Will you be all right? James nodded, touched by his mother's concern even amid her exhausting schedule. "I'll be fine, Mom. Thank you for coming." As Mrs. Johnson prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "James has overcome many obstacles to be here," she said, addressing everyone in the room. "All he needs is the opportunity to learn without having to overcome prejudice as well." The words hung in the air as she departed, leaving a profound silence in her wake. James sat straighter in his chair, drawing strength from his mother's dignity and courage. Whatever came next, he wouldn't diminish himself to make others comfortable, not anymore. Dr. Angelina Peterson sat alone in her empty classroom long after the final bell had rung. The events of the day played on repeat in her mind, James standing at the board, his confident hand transforming her impossible equation into an elegant solution, Dr. Abernathy's gentle rebuke, Principal Davenport's disapproving gaze, and most disturbingly, the revelation of the violence James had endured at his previous school. She pulled her laptop closer and opened a browser window. With slight hesitation, she typed James Johnson Mathematics MIT Summer Program into the search bar. The results loaded instantly, and there he was, in a group photograph on MIT's website, standing proudly among 19 other exceptional young mathematicians. The caption identified him as one of the program's most promising participants, demonstrating extraordinary aptitude in topological analysis. Further searching revealed a digital copy of the paper he had co-authored with Dr. Freeman. She downloaded it immediately, scanning the complex mathematical arguments with growing astonishment. This was no high school student's work with a professor's name attached for credibility. The insights were original, innovative, and expressed with remarkable clarity. "What did I do?" she whispered to the empty room. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Mr. Carter stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "May I come in?" he asked. Dr. Peterson nodded, closing her laptop. "Of course." Mr. Carter settled into a student desk across from her, his tall frame looking almost comical in the small space. "Quite a first day for our new student," he observed neutrally. "Yes," Dr. Peterson agreed, unable to meet his eyes. "I've been reviewing his work. It's extraordinary." "James is an exceptional young man," Mr. Carter agreed. "But that's not why I'm here." "I know," Dr. Peterson sighed. "I handled the situation poorly." "That's one way to put it." Mr. Carter's tone remained calm, but his words carried weight. "I'm curious, what was your first thought when you saw James refusing to sit?" Dr. Peterson started to formulate a defensive response, then stopped herself. "I thought he was being defiant. Challenging my authority. And if it had been Tyler Brooks standing due to a sports injury?" The question hung in the air between them. Dr. Peterson felt a flush of shame creep up her neck as she recognized the truth. "I would have been more accommodating," she admitted quietly. "Angelina," Mr. Carter said, using her first name with deliberate familiarity, "we've worked together for 7 years. You're a brilliant mathematician and dedicated teacher. Your students consistently excel, and you've helped countless young people discover their potential." "But," she prompted, knowing more was coming. "But your excellence as an educator should extend to all students, not just those who fit your preconceived notion of what a mathematician looks like." His words were gentle but unflinching. "James came to us after experiencing trauma at the hands of another teacher who couldn't accept that brilliance comes in all forms." Dr. Peterson swallowed hard. "I never would have struck a student." "No, but there are other ways to inflict pain," Mr. Carter observed. "Humiliation. Dismissal. Refusing to see someone's true abilities because of assumptions based on their appearance or background." Dr. Peterson stared at her hands, which had unconsciously clenched into fists on her desk. "I've never thought of myself as prejudiced," she whispered. "Few of us do," Mr. Carter replied. "But our unconscious biases shape our actions in ways we don't always recognize." He leaned forward. "The question is, what will you do now that you've recognized it?" Before she could answer, Principal Davenport appeared at the door. His expression was serious as he entered the room. "Dr. Peterson, a word." Mr. Carter stood. I'll leave you two to talk. Actually, I'd like you to stay, Raymond, Principal Davenport said. He turned to Dr. Peterson with a grave expression. Mrs. Johnson has contacted a member of the school board about today's incident. Dr. Peterson felt her stomach drop. I see. This could have serious implications, Principal Davenport continued. Particularly given Westridge's recent commitment to increasing diversity among both our student body and faculty. Are you saying my position is at risk? Dr. Peterson asked, alarmed. I'm saying, Principal Davenport replied carefully, that how you address this situation moving forward will determine a great deal about your future at Westridge Academy. The next morning, Dr. Peterson arrived at school an hour earlier than usual. She had spent a sleepless night reflecting on her actions and researching James Johnson's background more thoroughly. Beyond his mathematical accomplishments, she had discovered his volunteer work tutoring elementary school students in math, his perfect attendance record despite difficult circumstances, and a local news article featuring his victory at the State Mathematics Olympiad 2 years earlier. The photograph accompanying the article showed a beaming James, considerably younger but with the same quiet intensity she had witnessed yesterday. What struck her most was the caption, quoting him, "Math is beautiful because it doesn't care who you are, only what's true." As she prepared materials for the day's lessons, she heard footsteps in the hallway. James appeared in the doorway, stopping short when he saw her. The standing desk promised by Principal Davenport had been delivered and placed near the window, close enough to participate but not isolated from other students. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson," Dr. Peterson said, working to keep her voice steady. "You're here early." "Yes, ma'am," James replied cautiously. "I wanted to review yesterday's notes before class." Dr. Peterson gestured to the standing desk. "Your accommodation has been arranged. I hope it will be suitable." "Thank you," James said, moving toward it slowly. "Before you settle in," Dr. Peterson continued, "I was hoping we might have a brief conversation." James paused, wariness evident in his posture. "Yes, ma'am." Dr. Peterson took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology, Mr. Johnson. My behavior yesterday was unprofessional and unjustified." Surprise flickered across James's face, quickly replaced by careful neutrality. He remained silent, waiting. "I made assumptions about you based on factors that have nothing to do with your mathematical abilities or character," she continued. "That was wrong of me, both as an educator and as a person." "Thank you for saying that," James replied quietly. Dr. Peterson moved to her desk and retrieved a folder. "I've spent some time reviewing your previous work, including your paper with Dr. Freeman. It's exceptionally impressive." James shifted uncomfortably. "Dr. Freeman did most of the formal writing." "Perhaps, but the core insights are clearly collaborative." She opened the folder. "I've prepared an alternative curriculum for you. The standard AP calculus material would be largely review for someone at your level." James approached cautiously, examining the outline she had created. His eyes widened slightly as he scanned the advanced topics. "This would be more appropriate for your abilities," Dr. Peterson explained. "And more engaging, I hope." "This looks like undergraduate level work," James observed. "Yes. And if you're amenable, I'd like to arrange for you to audit some courses at the university where I earned my doctorate. Their mathematics department has a program for exceptional high school students." James looked up from the folder, genuine surprise evident now. "Why would you do that?" Dr. Peterson met his gaze directly. "Because talent like yours deserves nurturing, not obstacles. And because I was wrong, Mr. Johnson. Profoundly wrong in how I assessed and treated you." A moment of silence stretched between them, filled with the unspoken weight of yesterday's confrontation and its implications. "I accept your apology, Dr. Peterson," James finally said. "And I'd be interested in the alternative curriculum." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you. And I want you to know that I've spoken with both Principal Davenport and your mother about making this right." "You called my mom?" James asked, alarmed. "Yes. She deserved to hear directly from me. Dr. Peterson managed a small smile. She's as formidable as she is devoted to you. For the first time, James smiled slightly. She always has been. The first early arriving students began to enter the classroom, casting curious glances at James and Dr. Peterson standing together. Among them was Emma, who offered James an encouraging smile, and Tyler, whose usual swagger seemed somewhat diminished. "Well," Dr. Peterson said, returning to her professional demeanor, "I believe we have a class to prepare for, Mr. Johnson." James nodded and moved to his new standing desk, arranging his materials with methodical precision. Dr. Peterson watched him for a moment, recognizing something she had missed entirely the day before, not just mathematical brilliance, but remarkable resilience and dignity in a young man who had faced obstacles she could barely imagine. 2 weeks later, the advanced placement calculus classroom had settled into a new normal. James stood at his desk near the window, occasionally answering questions or offering insights when Dr. Peterson invited his contribution. The initial sensation surrounding his mathematical display had gradually faded, though whispers of MIT program and published paper still followed him through Westridge's hallways. "Before we conclude today," Dr. Peterson announced as the class period neared its end, "I have an important announcement." The students, now packing their belongings, paused attentively. As you know, Westridge has a tradition of entering the Northeastern Mathematics competition each spring. She scanned the room, making eye contact with several students. "This year, we've been invited to participate in a special exhibition round against Lakewood Preparatory and Phillips Academy." Excited murmurs spread through the classroom. These were prestigious schools with nationally recognized mathematics programs. "I'll be selecting a team of 4 students to represent Westridge," Dr. Peterson continued. "And I've already chosen our team captain." Her gaze settled on James. "Mr. Johnson has agreed to lead our team, bringing his considerable expertise to the competition." James looked up in surprise. This was the first he'd heard of being named team captain. Tyler's hand shot up. "Dr. Peterson, with all due respect, team selections have always been based on seniority. Some of us have been preparing for this opportunity for years." "An excellent point, Mr. Brooks," Dr. Peterson acknowledged. "And one I've considered carefully. However, my responsibility is to assemble the strongest possible team. Merit must sometimes supersede tradition." Her eyes met James's across the room. "Sometimes we must recognize when our established ways of doing things prevent us from embracing exceptional opportunities." The bell rang, and students began filing out. Emma paused by James's desk. "Congratulations," she said warmly. "You'll be amazing." As the classroom emptied, Dr. Peterson approached James. "I hope I didn't overstep by announcing your captaincy before discussing it with you privately." "It's all right," James replied. "I'm just surprised." "You shouldn't be," she said simply. "You're the strongest mathematician in the room, including me, in some areas." James absorbed this remarkable acknowledgement. "Thank you. I'll do my best to lead the team well." "I know you will." Dr. Peterson hesitated, then added, "Dr. Freeman called me yesterday." James's eyes widened. "He did?" "Yes. We had a lengthy conversation about your mathematical potential and future opportunities." She smiled slightly. "He was quite protective of you. Made me promise to provide the guidance you deserve." "He's always looked out for me," James said softly. "As he should." Dr. Peterson gathered her materials. "Which reminds me, the first session at the University Mathematics Department is this Friday afternoon. I'll be driving you myself, if that's acceptable to your mother." "I think she'd appreciate that," James replied. As they walked toward the door together, Dr. Peterson paused. "Mr. Johnson, James, I want you to know that I'm truly sorry for the way our relationship began. What matters is how it continues," James said quietly. Dr. Peterson nodded thoughtfully. "A mathematical perspective, focusing on the trajectory rather than the initial conditions." "Exactly," James agreed with a small smile. As they parted ways in the hallway, James caught sight of Mr. Carter watching from a distance, a satisfied expression on his face. The counselor gave him a subtle thumbs up before turning away. James headed to his next class, standing tall despite the lingering discomfort in his back. The pain would fade with time, the doctor had assured him. And now, so too would the barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. In the elegant language of mathematics that James loved so dearly, his path forward could be described as a function approaching infinity, full of limitless possibility, unfettered by artificial constraints and defined not by where he began, but by his own brilliant potential. Dear friend, brilliance doesn't look a certain way or come from a specific background. When we let our assumptions cloud our judgment, we risk missing the extraordinary potential in others. James's story reminds us that talent deserves nurturing, not obstacles, and that true education means recognizing our biases and growing beyond them. If this story touched your heart or made you reflect on your own experiences, please like this video and subscribe to support our mission of sharing stories that challenge perspectives and inspire positive change. Together, we can build a world where everyone's gifts are recognized and valued.